All right. What's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Deal in the Cards podcast. As always, I'm Sandy. Adam is with us today, which is going to be so much fun. We've got a huge discussion coming up for you. We are down Josh. We are down Andrew. Andrew, world traveler, a little knocked out right now. Was doing some on-site stuff at the WBC, which has been very exciting. But yeah, we've got a loaded episode. So we'll just jump right into it. We got some rotation talk, some power talk, some offensive talk. So it's going to be a lot of fun today. All right. So tons of storylines coming out of Cardinals Spring Training camp. As we've said a few times, I think this is one of the most fun spring trainings the Cardinals have had in a long time. They came into camp with a ton of open jobs, something that doesn't normally happen in St. Louis. Whether it's the rotation, there's still some open jobs in the bullpen potentially. Guys like Luis Gastelum could break through. And then the offense, man, we have no idea what this opening day lineup is going to look like. So it's going to be a great time. Let's just jump right into rotation talk for now. There are clearly three guys looking for two spots at the back of the rotation. If you subscribe to the same beliefs that we have here, which are generally that Liberatore is your ace, May is your two, McGreevy's your three. There could be, maybe you've got May at the one, that's fine. But it seems to me like those guys, their names are written in pen. And then at the back of the rotation, it's tough, right? You've got three guys between Kyle Leahy, Andre Pallante, and Richard Fitz, all three of whom have been impressive, albeit for different reasons this spring. So Fitz started today. Maybe not his best start, but Adam, why don't you break that down a little bit for us? What do you think's going on at the back of this rotation as we're, 2 weeks away from opening day, or even less than that now?
Yes, Sandy, I agree with you that I think the first three are pretty much set in stone. There isn't because of where they're at and their performance last year and just their pedigrees overall. I think there isn't a ton of room for leeway at the very top, but just like you mentioned, there's three guys fighting for the final two spots. I would probably argue that Leahy, just given how well he's adapted to starter bulk, missing bats, maintaining velocity, are obviously still, somewhat struggling with the command. Earlier in spring training, it wasn't an issue. The previous start, he did allow a few runs. At least the walks weren't an issue. I think he's earned one. I don't know about what you think, but I think he's earned a rotation spot. That leaves you with Richard Fitz and Andre Pallante. Right. Andre Pallante has been one of the best contact managers in all of baseball, and he hasn't been awful this spring. I think just given the fact that he's one of the more veteran options of the starting pitching crop that you have on this team, I think he just by default earns a spot. And quite frankly, I will go back on something that I said. I think McGreevy is somebody that I look at and I'm a little worried. And granted, it's just spring training, but the velocity is down, Sandy. It's, what is it, like a tick,
True.
2 ticks down? And yeah, like he's still ramping up. But these are the kinds of nuggets of data that you look at in spring. You're not looking at how many runs he's allowing. You're not really looking at, how many hits. And, obviously you would want him to perform, but I will say, I hope this is something that we get a little bit more clarity on in the next 2 weeks, week and a half, and further into the season. I want Michael McGreevy to be out there. He's a former first-round pick. I don't think it really changes a ton, but it's definitely something to keep your eyes peeled for. I think if we go out there in April 1st or late March for the first day, for opening day, I think you got Liberatore, May, Pallante, McGreevy, and Leahy. And I think Fitz is your odd man out for now, but he's on the outside looking in. You spent a lot of money to buy prospects from the Red Sox this offseason, and I would love to see him get an opportunity. And he's been pumping gas. I remember somebody put out a tweet where it said at one point he had the highest stuff plus of any starter. I think some of us saw that. I think it's going to be fun. He's going to get an opportunity this year, right? At some point or another, just like other guys we'll talk about this spring. But I wanted to hear what you have to say. What's your take on this?
Yeah. So, I think you're right that McGreevy deserves to be talked about more than he has been. I definitely think he came in with the assumption, like a presumption that he'd have a spot in the rotation. And even though like the stuff is probably not quite as sharp as it was last year, I was looking through his last start just now, and it looks like both his four-seamer and his sinker were sitting 90 to 91.5 is kind of where he was topping out. So that's not a lot. That's not great. But when you come in with what McGreevy came in with, the body of work last year, where at times he was their best starter at times last year, especially when Sonny Gray struggled in the second half. McGreevy acted as kind of a stopper, and he did what the Cardinals have wanted people to do, which is give you innings, give you reliable innings, and never really blow up. Like McGreevy never blows up. He might give up 3 or 4 runs in 5.5 or 6 innings, but he's never going to blow up on you the way like Miles Michaelis did at times, or Eric Fetty for a month straight. So when he comes in with that, I think while the Cardinals are looking at, I think he'd have to do a lot to lose the job. And even if the stuff hasn't been quite as sharp, he's still gotten outs. And when you look at just the stats, which it's spring training, super misleading, take it with a grain of salt. He has been far more productive than Leahy or Fitz. So I couldn't possibly see that he loses the job. And this is a great nugget here from Redbird Farmhands. McGreevy has said that he's went too hard in spring training in the past, so he's trying not to go max in spring. That's great to hear. That to me solidifies the fact that he's clearly your 3, especially with that nugget of information there. If he's getting guys out like this, I would love to see what it looks like when he's back up into the 93, 94 range. But as for the rest of the rotation, it's going to be interesting. When you're just looking purely at production, Andre Pallante has been the best of the 3 by a wide margin. And I don't think the stuff is quite as good as Leahy or Fitz. But Pallante in the past has shown an ability to get outs with, suboptimal stuff. He's got those interesting reverse splits too. So there are things to like about him as a pitcher. He manages contact really well, and that's something we've seen this spring as well. Also, it seems like he's generated more strikeouts than he has in the past. Small sample size, I get it. But he's looked pretty sharp to me. He had a great start the other day. And it was another disappointing outing for Fitz today, gave up that big home run in the second inning. You don't like to see that. He's had trouble managing contact before. So I think you're right. I think he's on the outside looking in. I think if I was filling out the rotation right now, it'd go Libby, May, McGreevy, Leahy, Pallante. But honestly, you could make a case to put Pallante in the 4 right now over Leahy, just with how spring has gone. So it's going to be something to monitor. I don't think like anything is figured out or finished yet. If Pallante had a bad start and Fitz came out and dominated next time around, like the Cardinals might reassess a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. I think you're right, though, in terms of body of work in the past, what guys have earned too with how they've pitched this spring. It's now harder than ever to keep Pallante out of this opening day rotation. So whatever the case, whoever is 6th is going to get a shot pretty early in the season, I'd assume. This is an interesting tidbit. What do you think about the Cardinals potentially going with a 6-man rotation? We got some news from Ollie on this the other day, so I'd love for you to share that.
I was actually about to ask you a follow-up here, and I was actually typing in the chat. Oh, wait, let me get a quick follow-up here before we switch gears to another topic, and you beat me to it. I think, honestly, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Obviously, we've heard that before in previous years from Jose Locke, where they're like, we have 6 starters, we have plenty of guys, and I'm just like, and because they're trying to contend. But here, we want to see as many guys get as many innings, and if that flexibility comes with having a 6-man, or if a 6-man rotation gives us that flexibility, that would be great too. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I was going to see what you had to say about having Fitz maybe making it as a 6th guy, or at worst case scenario, potentially being that swingman long reliever out of the bullpen right alongside Graceffo. And I guess to answer your question, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Do I think they do it based on what Marmola said? It's not his call. He said that they were kind of open to the opportunity to be up to Chaim Bloom and the front office staff. I would be game for it, man. I would like to see those guys go out there, but I also do want to see at the same time what Matthew Liberatore can bring you over the course of 30 starts or more. And if you have a 6-man rotation, Sandy, that will hinder or take away maybe 5 or 6 starts throughout the year. I don't know exactly the number, but it will take away some of his innings. And I do want to see, now that he has been extended back into a starter, throw in 150 innings or starter bulk over 100 even. I do want to see how the velocity sticks throughout the season, how his stamina sticks throughout the season, because we saw him coming out of the gates like a bat out of hell. He was fantastic. And then kind of started to waver towards the end. And, that's okay, because like we said, that was the first time he had been extended. But I think he'll be much better this season. And if you give Fitz the 6th spot, granted that you do that, given that you do that, it might take away that opportunity, but it might not matter. They may not care. Honestly, it doesn't matter really much in general. They're not competing for anything, and you can have your cake and eat it too in this situation. So I think it would be cool to see Fitz make the opening day roster. Do they do that? I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent on that. But what about you?
Well, I think a big part of Fitz potentially making the roster is the runway it would clear in AAA, which I know we're thinking like we're splitting hairs maybe at that point. I don't know how important that is to the Cardinals' long-term plan, but you have a lot of starters now at the upper minors that are concentrated there that probably need to be getting reps on a regular basis. And especially if you want to, if you want to pencil in, for example, Motts and Henderson, who are both coming up from AA into AAA this year, like you're going to need innings for those guys. You're going to need opportunities and work for them. Maybe AAA goes with a 6-man rotation to start the season, especially once Dobbins is healthy and you want him working in. There's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, so many innings to go around, or so few innings to go around, so many guys worthy of them. So I think something the Cardinals should do, and I voiced this on Twitter in like a reply, but I think the Cardinals should look into piggybacking. And I know they've done this in the past. I'm always in on this idea. I think it's something that more teams should probably try. I think it could be a lot of fun for the Cardinals to go the traditional 5-man, but for the 5th spot, be willing to do like 4-4 or a 4-5 type thing. I think it's a great way to save stress on your bullpen. I have no idea why teams don't try this more often. Yeah. Maybe it's because teams don't often find themselves in a spot where they have 6 starters they feel comfortable throwing out there, but I think the Cardinals could and should feel that way right now. And so, if you had something where it was like a Pallante Fitz piggyback, that'd be really interesting to me, where you could sort of play the matchup a little bit, get Pallante in there for the first 4 or 5 innings, then bring Fitz in for 3 or 4 and see where you're at. I think that's a way the Cardinals could get a lot of innings to guys. I know they'd be abbreviated starts, but plenty of guys throw 5 innings a start these days. So I don't think it's totally the end of the world. I'd love to see what our chat thinks about that. And I'll probably put a poll out on Twitter or something to evaluate how people feel about that later. But what do you think about that? Yeah, getting a little creative, doing something like that.
I'm totally for it. And I've been an advocate of kind of not straying away from the traditional 5+8 kind of pitching staff, but if they can make it work and go out there and try a bunch of different combinations, that would be really, really cool to see. And I'm totally for what you said, Sandy. If you have 4 and 4 and just kind of try out and swivel hoof sticks more or less efficiently in a different role, whether it's piggybacking, being a follower, putting a guy as an opener, go out and try whatever this year. Like anything will go. I'm here. Like I said before, I'm here for the entropy. I'm here to watch anything happen. If that's what they elect to do, that would be fine. If they have Fitz in AAA to start the year, it's not like he hasn't had command issues like you just alluded to. And then he comes up at some point and you got Dobbins, a bunch of other guys, Quinn Matthews, not to get too far off topic with them, but there's just so many guys that I feel like at some point it would behoove them to, and especially that they're starters, it would behoove them to be as creative as possible and as flexible with some of these innings. And if that may come at the expense of a Pallante or McGreevy, let's say their command waivers and you're like, okay, why don't we just have them go 4 innings instead of trying to go starter? We can we have the luxury, Sandy, of pulling them early because we can put a Fitz in there and he's just going to fireball. Let's say Dustin May, maybe doesn't have the kind of season that we're hoping that he has. Yeah. Maybe the velocity starts to dip at some point. Maybe the command goes off and he kind of regresses to the same issues he's kind of had as a major leaguer for the past few years. Then that gives you even more flexibility to say, okay, well, let's turn it over to Hunter Dobbins, Richard Fitz, Quinn Matthews, next man up. That's just as a big point to put a bow on what I'm saying, Sandy, is that the front office and Chaim Bloom and his guys did such a great job of supplying not just the high minors, because like as Kareem mentioned, they were kind of thirsty for quality starting pitching options, but every single level with quality guys who could potentially contribute at the major league level someday. So because you have a fountain and an oasis of players now to choose from, and you have that luxury, I don't think you have to just pigeonhole like Michaelis or Fetty like you did in years past. There's just so many options now. And I'm very excited to see what happens this year.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And one more thing too is the Cardinals, between Dustin May, who, as it's always been with Dustin May, the idea of Dustin May is very exciting. But you either get a healthy Dustin May who is not very good, or you get a very effective Dustin May who is not very healthy. And I'd love to see the Cardinals break that trend. I think there are signs that they might be breaking that trend. He looks great. He's added some strength, some weight this offseason. So hopefully he's more durable than he's been. The frame looks a little bit bigger, all good things. I'm sure they've got him on a great program too right now. But that's a guy that you can't necessarily just pencil in for 30 starts. And I feel the same way about Liberatore, who, even though he was with you all of last season, had serious fatigue, serious velocity issues in the second half, and he has been hurt plenty of times throughout his career. So between those two guys and then other young, higher upside arms, whether it's even like a Kyle Leahy, who I think is just a higher upside, more volatile arm than a Miles Michaelis, for example, the Cardinals are probably going to have injuries this year in the rotation. And that's something we're not used to because they've employed these rubber arm innings eaters for the last few years. Whether, when you signed Lance Lynn, you knew Lance Lynn was going to make 30 starts for you. You knew Kyle Gibson was going to make 30 starts for you, and you expected it. It wasn't surprising to anybody when those guys didn't get hurt. It wasn't surprising to anybody when Miles Michaelis gave you every start you signed him for in that 2-year extension. So it's going to be a bigger problem this year than I think it's been. Not a good thing. You never want to see anyone get hurt, but it makes sense for the Cardinals to have this backlog of MLB ready starters no matter what, where guys are going to get opportunities. I think in our bold predictions, Josh predicted something like 8 starters get at least 5 or 6 starts, or maybe he said 10, which was a lot.
10, yeah.
But I think there's some credence to that. You're going to have a lot of guys, and there are definitely going to be opportunities that there haven't been in recent years. So we've got plenty to talk about today as well with the offense. But before we do that, we just want to share a message from the presenting sponsor of our podcast, and that is 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet, Missouri, and they're open 10 to 6 Monday through Friday and 10 to 4 on Saturday and Sunday. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards, and they've got the newest selection of packs, boxes, and single cards of both local players and stars from around the league. So whether you're hunting that Eric Fetty card like Andrew, or you're looking for the next Shohei Ohtani card, go into 314. It's a great place to spend an afternoon. Very knowledgeable. They love helping people get into the card collecting hobby, which is something that was really hard for me at first. But I've started to enjoy it a little more. I've got some stuff now and that I got from there. So go check them out. Really fun place. Okay, so let's get to the offensive side of this position player side. Then we can kind of zoom out a little bit because I know you weren't on that show where we talked a little bit about our expectations for the whole season. So I'll just start with this. Is it possible? I've seen, Josh again in his bold predictions said Cardinals have a bottom 5 lineup in the league. I think they're going to be a little better than that the more I watch them this spring. There are times where they've looked lost, but do you think it's possible the Cardinals have more power in their lineup than people have thought they might?
Yeah, I think, just to kind of go off your first point, I do think this lineup is better. We talked about this on Thursday when we had Bernie, that there's a world, not many worlds, that pre-sell-off, not fire sale, but pre-waving the white flag before the offseason started, there was a world where this lineup could go out there and compete. And, we talked about the different guys that could attribute to that. But I do think, Sandy, there is quite a bit of juice that could be in here. And there's some sneaky power as well. Even with Brendan Donovan being traded, let's start with JJ Weatherholt because everybody wants to hear about him. He may not wow you with the raw power. I don't think he's hit a ball over 110 miles an hour, which is the league average metric or the league average threshold. But he's going to cook it very, very well because his barrel accuracy is fantastic. His EV90s are going to be high, like his 90th percentile. So he'll get to the 15 to 20 home run range at some point in his career. It may not happen his rookie year. Burleson is a guy who has steadily ascended every single year, and especially with the advent and the improvement of his hitting against left-handed pitching, Sandy, we saw that the improvements last year. Huge. I think it's very possible that he becomes a top 10 or better, if he's not already, first baseman in baseball, especially now with Contreras gone. That's his position. Mason Wynn, I think, started to hit for a little bit more power. He's not your prototypical power hitting player, but I think the air pull percentages are higher. So he's optimizing whatever raw power he does have to a shorter field. And I think that's going to play in game a little bit better. Victor Scott, we talked about the power there. The improvements that he's made. He's not a crazy power hitter. Herrera is insane. But I think the most obvious elephant in the room is Nelson Velasquez, right? And he just homered earlier today. He's been on fire the past week, especially. It's been absurd. And I will admit, I was not that I was like necessarily like fully wrong, but I will say, you know what? He's absolutely done so much more than I would have initially expected to earn not just a spot on the team, but potentially be your opening day left fielder. And I think there's so much to be excited about with this lineup, even if it's not going to be a contending season. And to kind of just further drive home the point, I do think that there is a decent amount of slugging and overall production from the guys that you have, even if it meant trading away Wilson Contreras and Brendan Donovan, because I think between everybody else stepping up, I do believe that JJ Weatherholt will provide similar value to Brendan Donovan. There isn't going to be a steep drop off because he's a pretty low risk but good player. It's kind of like what they said in Moneyball. You're losing these guys, but you're recreating them in the aggregate. And once these guys, some of them will step up, others may regress. But I do think you're losing a little bit of value. It's definitely not the lineup that you had last year, but I do think I don't think it's a bottom five. I think it's still a pretty solid lineup that could be sneaky dangerous depending on who shows out and who makes improvements and who surprises you.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better than people think too. Nelson Velasquez, we've got to talk about him. He came to the plate 3 times today and 2 balls left his bat at 109 miles an hour or better. He had another home run today. I mean, he's been awesome this spring. He's got 9 ribbies on the spring now. He's shown an ability to produce with guys on base, which I know it's spring. Like counting stats in spring are irrelevant, but man, he's been really, really good. Probably one of the best springs we've seen a Cardinal have in a while. And I think he's worked his way into their plans. They're treating him like a starter now. Did you see today they lifted him in the 7th inning, just like they've done for a lot of other guys who they plan to have on the opening day roster and manage their load? I think there's almost no chance now that Velasquez misses the opening day roster with the way he's played. He's really worked his way into their plans. So I like what you said about, look, having a guy like Velasquez and a Gorman too, who has really come on strong this spring. I am so glad they didn't trade Nolan Gorman early in the offseason. They would have gotten nothing for what it's worth. Nolan Gorman was worth nothing. And even if Nolan Gorman has a bad season, he's still worth nothing at the end of this year. And you're going to get probably about what you would have gotten before. But if Gorman does what we think he can do, what we know he can do, what we've seen him do all the way back in 2023, when Nolan Gorman looked like a top 30 hitter in baseball because he was really good all year, he can be a stud. He can be a mainstay in your lineup, as can Velasquez. And I think those guys, plus a Burleson, plus a Herrera, there's some sneaky power in this lineup. And I think that lineup has the upside to be roughly league average, which I know that's not the sexiest, most exciting thing in the world. But seriously, right? What's a good lineup? A really good lineup these days puts out like a 110 WRC plus on the whole. The Cardinals are not going to get to that mark. But the Cardinals could easily have a lineup that puts out a total WRC plus of around 100, especially if you see them cutting bait, which I don't know if they're going to do. But part of the reason their lineup isn't going to be great is because you're probably going to have a few black holes in it, whether it's Pedro Pages, Victor Scott, Nathan Church, who I think could be a little better. We can talk about that later too, or Jordan Walker, right? At least 2 of those 3 guys, 2 of those like 3 aggregate players are going to get a ton of at-bats and might be really bad. But the rest of the lineup looks really good. There's actually a really solid like 7-man row in there with JJ Weatherholt, Mason Wynn, and that group of players could aggregate somewhere around 105 to 108, which is like a really solid lineup, something that actually can win you a couple of games and sneakily get you into contention. So we'll talk more about, the full team and our projections there, but I think this could be a lot of fun. I think the lineup is going to be way more fun than some people think this year. And I think Velasquez and Gorman have both earned their spots. So about Velasquez, here's a question for you. A lot of times rebuilding teams will go out and get a guy like that to be like sort of a placeholder. And I thought that's what Velasquez was. I thought he made a lot of sense. Like you need guys who are going to produce somewhat that you don't ever think will be like true above average regulars, but you need those kind of guys. You need organizational warriors because someone has to hit, you got to make 27 outs every game for the most part, unless you're winning. And someone has to do that, right? Think about like the Nationals and what Joey Meneses was for them for a few years when they were really bad. I thought kind of that's what, Nelson Velasquez would be. But what I'm seeing now, and when you look farther back at what he did in 2023 and 2024, and then what he did in the minors last year, 50 games, 11 bombs, like he's got serious power. This guy could hit 25 to 30 home runs a year. He's not going to get there in the sexiest way. He's not going to hit, 280 with a 150 WRC plus. but he could very easily be a 30 home run hitter with a 115 WRC plus. That to me feels more like a building block than one of those placeholders. How do you see him, assuming he has a successful season?
Yeah, I'm with you there. And the more I'm seeing from him, the more I'm becoming sold on it. Obviously, it's still spring training. You want to make sure that you do your due diligence and give a lot of guys opportunities, but we'll get to that in a second. But to kind of address you with Nelson Velasquez, like not only did he do it at AAA, but he did it in the major leagues a couple of years ago. I don't know if you mentioned that verbatim, where it was 17 homers in 53 games with KC in 2023. And that's a very, very good power outlet. And it's kind of like I'm not comping him to like Jorge Soler, where he's pretty much a one-trick pony with really, really good raw power, doesn't have the greatest barrel accuracy, not an athlete, and is probably going to be stuck in left field and will probably DH a decent amount. But it's not like you're in a season when you keep drawing back to this overall theme, Sandy, where it doesn't matter, right? And you go out there, not that it doesn't matter, but you have more margin for error and more room for trying everything out. He only has 1 year of service time at this point. So it's not like you just sign him as a minor league free agent and you have to trade him, right?
Awesome.
It's such a high or low risk, high reward type of move, Sandy, where the ceiling is just so much there because there's so much projectable power. And if he goes out and shines, let's say he's a 1.5, 2 wins. That's obviously a higher end outcome. But if he does that in 2026, you have 4 years of Nelson Velasquez left. It's not like you just have to be, okay, well, he's got 5 years of service time. Let's move him to a contender who will give us a 40 FE prospect. You don't have to think like that. This is a piece that'll go out there and will give you what he does. Maybe he hits 20 home runs this season if you give him a pretty decent amount of run out in left field or the DH spot and you give him the plate appearances. And if he just doesn't perform to expectations the way he's doing this spring, then maybe you put him in AAA or you just cut you DFA him or whatever. There's really no heavy penalty with having a guy like this. And if he goes out and surprises you, I'm actually, like I said, I'm pleasantly surprised with what he's done. And given the fact that he does have the projectable power, these are the kinds of lottery ticket moves you'd like to see from a front office, right? Where you take the players that you think can be something that have shown improvements, especially with Bernie mentioning what he's done in Mexico as a result of not being on a major league team this past season. I think you may have something. And like we mentioned, Sandy, if there's nothing that's there, you just cut bait. But I'm very excited about Velasquez. And I do want to say here that I hope it doesn't come at the expense of getting other players reps. And I don't think it will. We mentioned this too, where there are 1,000,001 ways to get multiple players, several hundred plate appearances and see what you have with them while giving a guy like Velasquez as much run as you need to, right? So for example, a Nathan Church will go out there and get his, he'll go out there and eat. A Chase Davis, if he pushes the envelope at some point, will get his reps. Colton Ledbetter will get his reps. Joshua Baez will get his reps. Nootbaar, if and when he comes back healthy, he will get his reps. So for now, none of those guys will be ready except for Nathan Church is really his only competition. I want to see Velasquez go out there and swing it. Maybe he provides something and he's part of your future plans, and it's something we would have never expected, and it's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and I think too, to your point about who could actually push the envelope, I think people get this excitement around prospects, and they forget that what prospects really are just young players. And the only thing that makes you a prospect or a non-prospect is, when we're talking about a guy like Velasquez, who's clearly not a prospect because he has MLB service time, it's the fact that he has MLB service time. But the development is nonlinear. Just because you lose prospect status, it doesn't mean you stop developing or stop potentially getting better or making adjustments to your game. And just because you are a prospect, it doesn't mean that you're this can't miss talent. And Cardinals fans, if anybody, should get that. We're coming out of the Dylan Carlson era. We're probably nearing an end of the Jordan Walker era, which we could talk about later on the show today if people want to get into that. It is kind of a downer topic these days. But just because Velasquez is no longer labeled a prospect, it doesn't mean he can't be an interesting player for the Cardinals' future. I know he's older, but we've already seen flashes of things that should be really exciting for us. I think he's, for example, a much more interesting player than like a Moises Gomez was for the Cardinals, right? Some of the problems that Gomez had when he had that incredible year at AAA, Velasquez doesn't have. He's got much better feel for the zone. He doesn't just swing at everything. And he can do some cool stuff too. Today, that ball he hit off Michaelis, 420 feet, that was a full ball length inside off the plate. And he muscled that thing 109 miles an hour over the left field fence. The fact that he got the barrel through and pulled that was unbelievable. That was pretty awesome. So look, I think, yes, Colton Ledbetter, Chase Davis, these guys are prospects, but I don't think that they're necessarily like more intriguing players right now than a guy like Velasquez is to me, who's already shown you something. And all these guys have problems in their profile. The only like for sure things that I would like totally rather see over Velasquez at this point in time, it's just Josh Baez in your outfield. Yeah. You're pretty thin out there. So I think Velasquez makes a ton of sense for the Cardinals. And I think, if he's successful this year, they're going to continue to give him room. Like this is his opportunity. He's earned this. And he's going to get every chance now to win this job now and for several years to come, probably. So really exciting stuff. Like, what a great story, very similar to Josh Baez last year, a guy who was almost out. Like, I think if Josh Baez hadn't been successful in the second half of 2024 and then through last year, like he could be out of the Cardinals organization if things had kept trending the way they were. Yet he's played his way back into their plans. And now people around the industry view him as like a potential future star. So what an exciting story for Velasquez. One of the best things about baseball is watching a guy play his way back into an organization's plans. And I think Velasquez has a chance to do that too. So let's move. You're up.
Real quick, I kind of wanted to ask you, if we get to a situation, let's say we hit like mid-May, quarter way of the season, and Velasquez is just swinging it. Nootbaar comes back from his injury. What do we do? What do you do there, right? Like, are you going to bench Jordan Walker? What do you do with Nathan Church? Like we said, plenty of options, but if you were Chaim Bloom in that office, what kind of buttons do you push? How would you play that? Just real quick.
Well, if Velasquez is swinging it, I don't think I'm benching him. I want to see what it looks like for sure, right? Like he could have good stats that are completely unsustainable, but if he's swinging it and he's proving himself to be like a valuable major leaguer, I think I'm going to keep giving him runway. And that's what I'm going to do at that point. You want to factor Lars Nootbaar in. You need to get him plate appearances because you probably need to trade him. And so you find a way to do that doesn't involve taking one of your best hitters out of the lineup. Maybe that means if Herrera's still catching, maybe that means mixing Herrera in more often and getting Pais out of the lineup because we know what Pais is as a hitter. Maybe it means some fewer opportunities for a guy like Victor Scott and seeing if Nootbaar can play a little bit of center if Victor is really struggling, So it's going to be really interesting. Maybe it means shifting guys around. The Cardinals could be more creative than they've been in the past. I think one thing that Ali has not done a great job of is rotating people well to make sure you have 10 or 11 players getting consistent at bat. Sometimes he kind of zeroes in on his 9-guy group or 10-guy group. And so they could do a good job of rotating players like that, spelling Gorman. And by spelling Gorman, then you can play JJ at third. And by doing that, you open a spot for, if Sajazi's been playing in the outfield, he gets to come in and play second. And then you can open up a spot for Nootbaar in the outfield like that. So there are ways they could do it. They could be creative. But if Velasquez is swinging it, he gets to stay in the lineup for me. I think he's an interesting player at this point in time. And if I was ranking Cardinals players by like how intriguing they are as guys that could be around after the rebuild's over, Velasquez is no longer at the bottom of that list. Oh. And I think, at least in my mind, he might have jumped some guys like a Sajazi potentially. Like, I think there's a better chance Velasquez gets to 115 WRC plus than Sajazi does. I know Sajazi comes with more defense, but I don't see that in his profile. What do you think about that? Where's Velasquez for you now in relation to guys that he has moved into the same tier as and have become his competition?
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about Sajazi, especially. I think Derek mentioned that he's going to get run in center. That's another outfield option, right? And I think ultimately Sajazi is going to be earmarked, or at least are going to try to kind of replace that Brendan Donovan Swiss Army knife role. And he's kind of shown versatility in the majors and the minors too. Real quick on Velasquez, I think a good like median range for him right now, I would still say fourth outfielder, platoon hitting, right-handed bat. And I don't think that's unfair to say, right? Like, he's shown out at spring, and they should give him an opportunity to outplay that projection of just being a fourth guy. and potentially swing his way to being a full-time big league outfielder, or even if you have to DH him, the bat could very well ascend to the point where you got to play him. That being said, I do think that a good range would be the fourth guy. And like we said, Sandy, there are so many options they can play through.
Yeah.
That if Velasquez is just kind of towing the line, I don't think it's worth just throwing him out there nebulously and then making sure that you get every other guy opportunities. But I'm with you. If he is just slugging it 120, 130 WRC, shoot, even 110, like, or 115, you just roll with him, because I don't think there's going to be many guys who are going to be above 115. If he's got that kind of slash line or production value in mid-May, for example, there's maybe a handful or a couple of players who are going to be better than him at that mark. Maybe Herrera, Burleson, maybe I don't know who else could, push forward with that. I think you just give him that opportunity, but also be cautiously optimistic. And I think the front office is going to do a great job of that, being cautiously optimistic of,
for sure,
giving him the runway and the opportunity he has shown to deserve this spring, while also saying, hey, right, let's not forget about Nathan Church, who is tapping into more power, that he's got a really good hit tool, is a great defender, a great runner, a very toolsy, I don't want to say very toolsy player, but a high floor kind of player. And if you tap
absolutely
power, who knows what you have with him. But just to kind of wrap it up, I do think that right now I would still pigeonhole him as the fourth outfielder type player, all things considered. But man, does he deserve an opportunity to prove me wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Before we switch topics, I actually want to engage in a little exercise here. Like, let's talk about ceilings for guys on this team right now. And I'll qualify that to be like 75th percentile outcome. How many guys do you think their 75th percentile outcome is somewhere around like a 115 to 120 WRC plus? I think we can Sharpie in like Herrera, obviously, way better than that. Burleson has ascended well past that, and like I think Gorman is around there. He could be better than that. Like 75th percentile outcome for him feels like a 120 to 125. JJ Weatherholt maybe. And then after that, is Velasquez the next guy?
That's a good question. So, okay, you took Weatherholt, Burleson, Herrera. I would say maybe Nolan Gorman, but has he really shown enough? We know what he can do. I would put in Nolan Gorman at that, because if we're talking about 75th percentile,
we've seen it's been a great season.
Exactly. We've seen what he can do when he's really on. The dude is a 30-plus home run threat in his sleep. I would throw in as a dark horse a Joshua Baez. I don't know if we're talking about minor leaguers so much.
If he gets a shot, then yes.
If he gets a shot, right. Yeah, I think Nootbaar, when he's on, is that dude. He's a very toolsy guy, but inconsistent and can't stay healthy. I'm kind of projecting it, seeing that he could potentially be that. But honestly, Sandy, I feel like I'm having to split hairs and really trying to dig deep and trying to find opportunities to say, oh, well, this guy could potentially ascend. But I think Nelson Velasquez is right up there, man. I think the three guys you mentioned are pretty obvious. Those are the stalwarts in your lineup.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody else that produces is just icing on the cake. And you hope that they produce, and you hope the best, because they can be future pieces of a Cardinal contending team a couple of years from now. If Nelson Velasquez is part of that, and if he gets to the 115 WRC plus, I would not be shocked. I think he absolutely can do that. And remember, in 2023, in just 53 games, smaller sample, it was a 133 WRC plus. So he's got it in him. And maybe that wasn't, and there's not a huge difference at all between his ex-WOBA and WOBA. So it's not like he was kind of BSing that, nor is there a large difference between his BABIP and average. So I do believe that this will, even if it was a smaller sample, who knows what happens over a couple more 100 PAs. But I do think it's in him. And we see that with the raw power. And that does give you, like you mentioned, Sandy's ceiling, because the way I kind of like to see it, and the way the industry does, is that the hit tool, the discipline gives you a high floor, right? Nathan Church is that kind of guy, for example. Weatherholt, same thing, different degrees, but that power gets you over the top. And that's what the idea is with Nelson Velasquez, and conversely not so with Weatherholt or Nathan Church, because they may not have that kind of raw and power, but they're going to tap into it, and that gives them a high floor with their hit tools. But Velasquez might swing and miss. He hasn't shown it yet in spring, but I do think in terms of ceiling, because he is a legit 30 home run threat and maybe even more in the tank, that gives you all the ceiling in the world as a hitter.
I agree with that. I think we've got time for this. I was thinking about throwing it in. This is kind of a surprise, but should we talk a little bit about the center field battle? Are Church and Scott more comparable players than people think? We've addressed this like sort of before, but it seems like everyone has Scott like penned in as the starter. When like I think he's going to get the opening day start. I don't think the Cardinals are going to deviate from the plan. I don't think they're going to give it to Church. But I think that those players are more similar than people are willing to admit. Like Church was really bad last year in his cup of coffee, 504 OPS, almost hit for very little power. But Scott was worse in his cup of coffee in 2024. And I know Scott was young, but he had a 502 OPS, if you'd remember. And even last year, in a season where Scott started off really strong, he was like, I say this as a guy that really likes watching Victor Scott play, but he was so bad at the plate that he ended up regressing to a 601 OPS by the end of last season. Even in the minors, Scott had a great 2023 season, and he jumped onto some top 100 prospect lists. He generated real hype, and a lot of people around the industry viewed him as this like high floor player who he might not get to much in the big leagues, but he might have a slightly average, maybe even just a bit above average bat, like the best of John Jay type beat with better defense and better speed on the bases. And they saw him as this like 50 steal, like gonna hit enough to get on base to make something happen and play incredible outfield defense, which he did last year. He did do that. And he stole quite a few bags, like 35 or something. But the bat was bad enough in year 2. And it hasn't been good in the minors since 2023 either. Even in AAA, Scott was like a sub 600 OPS guy in 2024. Right. So I guess my question is, after what Church did last year, and granted he's older, but Church put up a 916 OPS between AA and AAA last year, tapped into way more power than anyone thought he had in his profile. And is it an anomaly? Maybe. But he ran like almost a 400 on base percentage last year. Wow. Scott hasn't gone above 300 in the big leagues or AAA yet. Is there something to say that these are more similar players than we thought? And is it fair to say that, at least in my opinion, Church is a more interesting prospect with the bat now than Victor Scott is?
Okay. Yeah. I remember Josh asking Bernie that question on Thursday, and I firmly agree with him on the latter part that Church and Victor Scott's profile similarly. I don't think Church is quite the athlete that Victor Scott is.
True.
But I think by and large, he's a better offensive player. Granted, I think he's a little bit older, but all things considered, I think they're very comparable in terms of future value outputs, like just everything considered, defense, offense, base running. That being said, I do agree with you there that I think they're going to start Scott. I think even if the production isn't showing in spring, we talked about this, that there's a little bit of newfound bat speed with Victor, and I think he's showing
that's true.
A little bit more. Yeah. And, to kind of address what you said about the 500 OPS his rookie year, like he really wasn't great at all. And even the 600 OPS last year, all in a vacuum isn't amazing, but it is a 100-point increase over a much larger sample, even if he started the season on a tear, right? And then he kind of regressed towards the season in the end. It wasn't great. And the whole idea, and I remember talking about this with Blake Newberry and JP over at Viva Alberto's a couple of years ago. I saw the 50 FE rankings for Scott, and I was like, what are we doing here? And the idea is I wanted Victor to prove me wrong, because he was on the podcast tour that year, and he was on here.
He's such a cool guy. He's really like him.
He's super chill, very down to earth, very approachable, and that showed when he came on different podcasts. But I was asking him, how much do you see your power being a huge swing factor in your prospecting? And he said, I'm working on it. I'm tapping into it. I didn't believe that he was a starter. He has proved me wrong. And the whole idea is that he's just going to be such a damn good defender and base runner that even if he's like a 600 or 650 OPS guy, he's going to get you one 1.5 wins on the with the glove out in center, patrolling the 8, the same way Michael Ciani did a couple years ago, right? Michael Ciani couldn't hit a lick, arguably a worse hitter than Victor Scott, but is a platinum glove caliber defender. Hopefully he gets some role in Los Angeles, or who knows what happens there. But I think Victor, given the fact that he improved 100 points last year, maybe he gets to 650 or 700 with the improved bat speed. We talked about this with improved, or at least stagnant, contact ability, ceteris paribus, all things held constant. I do think, and you improve the bat speed, the ingredients for a 2.5, I don't want to say 3 yet. I think I was a little overzealous. 2 to 2.5 win player is there. And on a championship caliber lineup, you just pigeonhole him, just throw him in the 8 or 9 spot, or probably the 9 spot, and you call it a day, and you hope that everybody else above him produces, and you let him pass because he's a good base runner and defender. Now, with Nathan Church, you can make a similar argument that he has just been swinging it harder too, and he's been tapping in a little bit more power. He has league average raw in him, Sandy, or at least pretty close to it, with a 109 max, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he has done a much better job of getting to that. And Nathan Church, ever since he was picked out of UCI a couple of years ago, he's always run, if I'm not mistaken, a league average slash line at every level, which even if it wasn't really, exactly. So he's always held his own. It's the same thing with Baez. There was something in his profile buoying his production that you give him every opportunity. Obviously with Baez, it's the insane raw power, but with Church, it's the eagle eye at the plate, the insane bat to ball ability. And now he's the same way with Baez. They're improving on what made them, or they're improving on their kryptonites as overall prospects. And I think that Nathan Church gets the opportunity. But just to kind of wrap it up and let you put your 2 cents on this, I do think that the two are very close together, but I don't think that those, just because Victor Scott is my opening day center fielder, and I think he gets to at least 400 more plate appearances, that doesn't mean that I don't think Nathan Church can also go out there and provide a semblance of value himself and potentially be part of the future plan, Sandy. I think if a Jordan Walker continues to poop the bed in right field, maybe you just throw, maybe you slide Velasquez over, Nootbaar comes in. We mentioned all the guys, there's so many opportunities, and I think Church will be on that list of players to get several hundred PAs, and I think he deserves it. I think the two situations can play out together. I think you can have your cake and eat it too with Victor Scott and Nathan Church. Obviously, if Victor regresses and doesn't take that forward step, then you cross that bridge when you get there. But I do think there is a world, Sandy, that you can have both of them get run and potentially be future parts of this team. And you start that this year with seeing what you have in both of them.
Without a doubt. I think you're right that like Church has to get opportunities at this point. Yes. If you go back and look at what he's done since coming to the minor leagues, since coming into the Cardinals organization, right? Like really, really struggled in a cup of coffee at Palm Beach, and then got the promotion to Peoria and was immediately an above league average hitter. Granted, he was old for the level, but that 724 OPS with 46 walks in 119 games, 364 on base, and that was just what he does. The following year, he held his own at Double-A, and then in 2025, kind of went nuclear across 2 leagues, only 37 strikeouts in 384 plate appearances to go with 33 walks. Like, this guy has a great eye. One of the most disciplined hitters in the organization, 386 on base, which came on the heels of a mini breakout in the fall league the year before, where he ran a 397 on base and 815 OPS. And he's gotten to some slug. Like Victor Scott, if I go through and look at what he's done, has basically never slugged in the minor leagues. He had like a solid run in the fall league, but 303 slug in 24 as a 23-year-old at AAA. Like, not super young for the level, basically 1 year younger than Church was when he completely dominated AAA.
Right.
The argument that Victor Scott progressed so much faster, he should progress faster. Victor Scott was a 5th-round pick. The Cardinals invested significant resources in going and getting Victor Scott and bringing him into the organization. He was always going to start at least a level, maybe 2 levels higher than Nathan Church was as a day 3 pick, who was getting paid $100,000 in signing bonus to come, right? Like, they spent significantly more resources to bring in Victor Scott. Of course, he was going to start higher and move faster. The Cardinals do that. Every organization does that with prospects that they like more headed into the draft. But Victor Scott has basically never slugged in the minor leagues. Like listen to some of this. 2023, 303 slug at Memphis. Then in St. Louis, he has yet to slug over 300, 283 in his first year, up to 296 last year. Like, to me, that says that, yes, Victor Scott can be what he was last year for you, which is a valuable enough player. He was a 2-win player last year. But I think if you're a center fielder, that's one of the most important positions on the field. You got to be worth more than 2 WAR these days to stick around in center field.
I agree.
You got to be a 2.5 to 3-win player, I think, to make it work in center field for more than just a couple of years, especially on a contender. That is a place where teams can rack up value. And so I think Victor Scott can do that. I think there's a path for him doing that. I think the bat is better than it's been, of course, but he needs to show some of that this year. And I think if he doesn't, Nathan Church is going to get a shot. Other than pedigree, I really don't know what separates these people in the minds of a lot of evaluators. Victor Scott, before 2024, when he made his debut, Baseball America ranked him 83rd among all prospects. Baseball Prospectus was even more bullish, ranking him 64th. Other than the hype he generated after that season, there is no discernible difference to me in terms of that weighs in Victor Scott's favor. Nathan Church, on the other hand, has gotten to some slug and has demonstrated serious on-base skills. Last year, slugged 524. Even at his worst in AA, was slugging 360, 373. Those are numbers that Victor Scott just hasn't gotten to. And when you look at his Savant page from last year, Scott in some ways was worse than he was in his first year. He got a little bit luckier, but he was first percentile in expected slug. No hitter in baseball was worse at generating power than Victor Scott was last year. And that has got to change. I love Victor Scott. I love the type of player. He is so fun to watch. He's a highlight machine, but he has got to do more for you than just play defense if he's going to be a contender, a piece of your next contender. You can't be a team that's completely made up of that. It's just not going to work. And that's the same reason why Siani, as great as he was never going to work for more than a couple of years for the Cardinals. So I think you need to see a little more from Scott. I hope they do, but I think you're right. Both guys are going to get serious opportunities this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see both of them in the outfield at the same time on some days. I mean, they're just going to cover up everything. It's like a vacuum out there. So, Adam, before we close out today, I'd love to ask, where are you on the team as a whole? You've said a few times this show that this is the kind of year where the Cardinals aren't competing for anything, but I feel like the more we talk about it, it's always going to happen. We're always going to sort of talk ourselves into it. But do you think the Cardinals could surprise some people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's absolutely in the cards, and we saw it last year where they won 78 games, and I don't think they were a 78-win team, and I think that was shown by their Pythagorean theorem win-loss record where it was like a low 70 wins. And you subtracted some players. Obviously, some guys will fill in, like the Weatherholts of the world. Maybe you get ascensions from other players. I do think, by and large, maybe it's slightly worse on paper, this roster. If they win 80 games and catch some fire and outplay their projected win-loss, I wouldn't be shocked. But I don't think we're going to be seeing 85 unless something crazy happens. They tap into that 2010s devil magic that was just absurd and so much fun to watch. But I do think that at this point, and they win so many one-run games this year, if that doesn't happen, I think they win maybe 70 games. And to kind of a second point off of that is that I don't want to see them going, because they did this last year and they shot themselves in the foot, Sandy, towards the latter, like towards the tail end of the season where they're winning meaningless games. They're playing themselves out because they were a couple games away from.
I know, it was kind of the worst.
Yeah, no, dude, like they were a couple games away from surpassing them, like from like being the 8th lottery odds to being 7th or 6th. And granted, like they got very unlucky and fell all the way to 13, but there's a huge difference between 8 versus 7 or 8 versus 6.
Huge difference.
And maybe we're talking about a top 10 pick. At that point, you're getting a crop of guys. So, and they'll find someone good at 13. This is a very deep draft class, but I really hope they go out there and make sure, not make sure, because you got to be competitive. You can't just tank and like you can in the NBA or whatever. But I do want to, and I don't, like I said, like I've been on record this before. I don't mind if the team goes out there and loses a ton of games this year, because I'm looking at this 2027 draft class, Sandy. I'm looking at the pitchers. I'm looking at some of the hitters that are going to be up there. I am so excited for potentially a Dax Whitney or a Chris Lenovis. He carved up Baylor that one time, and I'm sorry, but like, man,
it was tough. It was tough.
It was, yeah, dude. Anyway, like, my point is, there are going to be so many exciting names, and the idea of I don't like it is tanking technically, and it sucks to watch. And this is not what we're used to as Cardinals fans, especially guys that are our age, people our age, where we've been spoiled for a quarter century almost, that they've just been so competitive in the last couple of years. We're like, what the heck is going on? We're not used to this. Somebody get me my winning team back. It's just going to be something that we're going to a tough pill to swallow, but the rewards, Sandy, are going to be so great. And we've already seen that happen with a JJ Weatherholt falling to the Cardinals at 7, who can be an all-star. Liam Doyle, who is a freak on the mound and has ace upside. Who knows who they get at 13 this year? Who knows if they were to lose 90 or more games this season, the kind of player that they'll be in line for with a potential top 10 selection. Who knows what happens in 28? Maybe they're contending after that. But I kind of went on a tangent there, but I do think that they should go out there, obviously be competitive as possible, but don't go make any, and they're not going to. I do think that this is not going to be a very good team. I do think they lose 90 games at least, if I had to predict it, unless something crazy happens. And fans shouldn't be fully upset about it. They've done a really good job of preparing us for that. And Ali mentioned in in our little meeting that, look, this is going to be a year where we need to be more transparent than in years past, because there's going to be more room for answers that we need to provide. If we're losing, we need to go out there and say, hey, this is the future plan. Stick with us. I am okay with that happening, because the rewards for the future, if we're patient as a fan base, are going to be beautiful. I cannot wait to see in 2030 for Liam Doyle to be your ace of the rotation of a championship caliber Cardinals team, with Joshua Baez being your 2-hitter and JJ Weatherholt leading off. We're dreaming. Jordan Walker batting cleanup. Exactly. Nelson Velasquez, your 5-hitter.
So goofy.
Yeah, we're dreaming. We're looking here, but there's a blueprint where that could actually be, and there's a world that could be the case 4 or 5 years from now. But we got to be patient. We got to put in. We got to let the front office lay the foundation, which they've already started doing. And
they're cooking.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that the messaging has been really good on the Cardinals' part this offseason. They've been clear. There's obviously a direction. Chaim has done a good job setting that vision and including the whole fan base on that. Everybody knows that, look, the Cardinals are not necessarily going to be the most competitive team, but I also think Chaim has done a good job on winning on the margins and putting together a team that at least is interesting. And I think I'm probably the high man in the room of the two of us on this team. But when you just think about how much better the pitching could be than it was last year, you think about, at least in my opinion, the fact that Ali Marmol steals you a couple of games a year with this bullpen management. I think the bullpen's going to be really good again this year. I think there's totally a path for the Cardinals to get to 80 wins. And if the Cardinals are on pace for 80 wins, it doesn't happen often, but one hot streak is what separates you from the playoffs or not the playoffs at that point. I'm not saying the Cardinals will make the wild card or anything like that, but I think they're going to be interesting. I think they're going to be better than some people think. And I think with some of this young pitching, and especially if a couple of these bats take off, it could be a really fun season where you see the Cardinals kind of stay sneaky, hang back in the race a little bit, at least enough to keep people invested, at least into, late August, early September. One more thing too, and I think this is the beautiful thing about the way the Cardinals are constructed this year. If they're good, they're only good because the players that they needed to succeeded, right? So like if the Cardinals are good, it's because guys like Nelson Velasquez and maybe Jordan Walker, but Nolan Gorman and a Thomas Sajazi and a Nathan Church. It's because those guys took the opportunities they got and they ran with it. If the Cardinals are good, it's because Kyle Leahy solidified himself as a starter. It's not because Miles Michaelis pitched a little better than he should have. It's not because these guys that are on the way out the door were decent for you and were what you paid them $20 million to be. If the Cardinals are good, they're good for all the right reasons that pertain, that will, lead to or portend success in the future. And so that's what I really love about this roster, where if they are good, that just means that the rebuild is moving at a faster pace than we thought. It doesn't mean they're delaying it or that there's a wrench thrown into it or anything like that. So I think truly a masterclass getting ready for the season here by the Heim front office. Very excited to see how they're going to handle things this season. It's going to be a really fun, test to watch them try to balance. And was it you that asked Ali about that the other day?
I think I asked. So there was a couple questions. The one I asked was Victor Scott, his outlook, and the next one was kind of more of like a general strategy, cohesion between front office. So yeah, but it was So like, I did want to ask you one more question before we close out here, Sandy.
For sure.
Let's say this team is teetering on the verge of contention. So remember,
don't tease me like
that. Let's throw it back to 2024 when they went all in and they failed.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The record on paper showed that they have a chance, but the run differential said that this team was probably a little bit worse. But let's ask the run differential part. Let's say that they are like 5 games above 500, 3 games out of a wild card.
Ooh.
And you have Dustin May as a good starter who, if you were to trade him, could net you value. Do you cut bait on Dustin May, or do you put chips in the middle of the table and roll the dice and see what you can do with the win, with the rest of the roster for going to the season?
Yeah, this is totally a cop-out. So I'll start with this and then I'll give you a more definitive answer. But like, I think it just depends on your circumstances. If you're only good because Dustin May is like competing for a Cy Young, I think it'd be really hard to not keep him. It'd be really hard to say like, man, we're going to get so much worse by trading this guy. And like, he might win us. Like, I'm not saying this is likely at all, but it'd be really fun for the Cardinals to have a starter win a Cy Young. It'd be really fun for the Cardinals to have one of the best pitchers taking the mound at Busch Stadium deep into September with something on the line. And I think that it's hard to pass that up, especially for the DeWitts. It'd be really hard to pass that up. I think on, conversely, if you're good and Dustin May is good, but is pitching like a very solid 2-3, which is what he should be if he's having a good season and not like this incredible outlier season where he's still going to net you real value, but you're not going to like throw your team in the toilet and you're not going to deprive the fans of the chance to witness something special. I'd trade him. And I'd say this makes a lot of sense. We can tread water without this guy. He's not the only reason we make the playoffs. If we make the playoffs, I think I'd do that. And then it also depends what the market looks like. If there are several other really strong pitchers available, then I think it's like, oh, maybe you don't get quite as much. And if Dustin May's great, you don't want to deprive the fans of this opportunity. But if the pitching market is super thin and teams have injuries and they need to add somebody like that, then again, it gets really hard because you're like, wow, Dustin May is like more valuable than he should be. And this is the type of resource we have to move on from. So when I look at the pitching market right now, it's like, there's totally a chance that Tarek Skubal is available. I don't think Paul Skeens is going to be available, but maybe he is. Maybe Pittsburgh is like willing to make something like that happen at a deadline and someone's super desperate and willing to throw everything at them. So we're just going to have to watch and see. But yeah, I think like it just depends on your circumstances for your team. But again, the real thing is if the Cardinals are good, they're going to be completely driven by players that are around for the long term, probably, unless like it's a May and Nootbaar combination. But it seems to me like if they're good, it's going to be because some of these guys have taken roles and run with it. And that's sustainable. That's the success you want to see. And that means, instead of working against yourself, your rebuild is proceeding better than expected. So, Adam, thanks for jumping on today. This was so much fun. We'll definitely be doing it again soon. And thanks everybody for tuning in today. If you missed it, we talked about the rotation earlier, and we moved into some lineup talk, and we just wrapped up by talking a little bit about how we feel about the team. So opening day is upon us, right? Less than 2 weeks now. Was it 2 weeks from yesterday? It's a Saturday, right?
I think it's a Thursday against Tampa. Whatever 2 Thursdays from now, or shoot, I have no idea. Yeah, week and a half, 2 weeks. I'm here for it.
It is upon us. It is upon us. It's going to be a really fun year for the Cardinals. All season, you can find all your Cardinals news right here at Deal in the Cards. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and anywhere you consume your podcast. So thanks for joining us today. Make sure on your way out to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. We love doing this, but it's support from, listeners and viewers that helps us keep doing this. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Adam.
Now I feel bad that you said thanks, Adam, and I said thanks, Nathan Church. Are we still live?
It's